Hey folks, it's Nate. Thanks for joining me for another Iron Age comic review. And today we are looking at the big iconic comics crossover event, for lack of a better term. This crosses over Black Ops, Kamen America, and the Soulfinder, all three of the big Iconics franchises, with a little bit for the fourth one. And it's a pretty good book. We're going to talk about it in the usual way. We're going to have the product overview, a review of the product, followed by a spoiler warning, and then a critique of the product that digs into the story a little bit deeper. Let's start with the physical product. And I would probably just gloss over this section because it's an Iconic Comics book. And I've already talked a lot about how I think their quality is, which is to say very high. It's got a good high quality hardback cover. The interior paper is very good. You have these really nice spreads that are an addition on the inside. I forget what these are technically called, but it's very nice to see these kind of inside covers there. Very, very beautiful artwork. As you can probably tell by which side has the title on it, I got the Indiegogo version, or if you don't know, there were two different versions of this. The Indiegogo version has this cover on the front, and this is the back. And if you got the Kickstarter version, then they're reversed, and this would be the title cover page. The art on these, I will tell you who's who in just a moment here. So on the Indiegogo cover, you have... it's on the next page. That's why I can't see it. So on the Indiegogo cover, you have a Jeff Spokes piece, and then on the Kickstarter cover, you have Kyo Naoki 2501. That's who did this. That might actually be a commission piece from a fan artist, given who the artist signature is. Anyway, an excellent book, excellent quality, excellent covers. You can also get... I also got the omnibus version, which I haven't talked about before because, this is the first time I've seen it. Also, great, high quality. One thing you get here that you don't with any other Iconic Comics book so far is a raised cover. So this is actually raised and embossed. It's very nice, high quality, feels good in the hand. Generally what you would expect of the quality of their campaigns. Now, something I have to note is I splurged a little bit, and I did something I don't normally do. Usually I just get the base perk. However, I was very interested in the t-shirt. This has the Soulfinder Chiro symbol on it. And I was interested in seeing this, seeing what the quality was, and I can say it is a very nice t-shirt. The fabric feels really good. It's very comfortable. It's well cut. The one issue with it that may not be an issue for you, but could also very well be an issue for some people, is the print icon itself. I'm not sure exactly what this is. It feels like some kind of a latex ink or some other kind of paint applied to this. It is not a dye sublimation into the shirt itself. That means it requires a lot of special care. You have to be very careful in how you wash this and how you iron it. It may not be a shirt that you wear a whole lot because of that. Whether that matters to you or not is going to be a matter of personal taste, but it's something I should point out because this is not like your Captain America shirt where it has the shield printed on the front and dye sublimated in. This is something that is a lot higher quality, that pops out a lot more, that is not going to fade if you take care of it properly, but if you don't take care of it properly, you can very easily damage this. So that's just something to be aware of. We also got a nice card here. It has Father Redder on it. I don't know if everybody got a Redder card or if they were distributed randomly, but this is what I got this time around, and it's very thematically appropriate. And we got a patch. We got a Chiro patch as well. So even if you didn't get the t-shirt, you still got something pretty neat. And as you all know, I am a fan of patches. So the art in the book proper is by Timothy Lim. And as if you've watched this channel for a while, you know that I think Lim has pretty much perfected his Kamen America style. And that is the base style of both Black Ops and Kamen America. Not to mention the first volume of Soulfinder. So it's really not that out of place to see these characters in this way. All in all, it looks quite good. And I don't have any big critiques of it. Lim has always had a knack for doing cute girls and cute poses with believable, fun and exciting expressions. And in this book, he has refined his more serious expressions to an extent. It's good to see that kind of improvement. I do think it has always been one of the weakest parts of his storytelling in some of these series that kind of call for this kind of nuance in expression. And I'm glad to see that he's developing it more. I don't think he's 100% of the way there yet, but I do like the improvements in that kind of visual acting on the page. You can see that in several points here in these exchanges between Vicky and Hair Trigger. I forget how you pronounce her name. I'm just going to call her Hair Trigger for now because it's a Russian name. And I want to say it's Kanina, but I'm pretty sure that's not actually how you would pronounce it. That's how it's spelled. But Hair Trigger is in this book. So let's talk a little bit about the story. This story is written by Mark Pellegrini, who is the usual scribe for the Kamen America and Black Hop series, with input by Doug Ernst, who is, of course, the author of Soulfinder. And it's a pretty solid story. The basic premise is that we are looking at the development of, for lack of a better term, the Suicide Squad of the Kamen America universe. And since Kamen America is a pretty bright and cheerful universe, the Suicide Squad of the Kamen America universe is still a pretty lighthearted crew, but it is not quite the same group of people as we're used to. So our primary protagonists are Vicky, who was revealed as Vermilion Masquerade at the end of Kamen America Volume 4. Oh, and by the way, we're gonna spoiler a lot of the stuff that came up to this. It's just necessary to talk about the story in this book. So I apologize for not saying that sooner, but from here on out, you're forewarned. So we have Vicky and we have Hair Trigger, both of whom are kind of under arrest, but they have opportunities to work off some of their sentences for their crimes. And this is a story of one of the things they do. They're trying to chase down Apex Moth, the leader of Cryptique, which is the primary villain in the Black Ops series. And they are doing this because he's gone to Jersey to recruit the Jersey Devil to his cryptid organization. All in all, it's a pretty interesting group. It's interesting the way they justify the characters coming together, and it's interesting some of the things they do. Hair Trigger has gained the ability to empathically communicate with cryptids through the hand of Saint. She had a hand of one of the saints grafted onto her body. I'm not sure if this is a actual Catholic saint or if this is something that was invented for the purposes of this narrative. But she can empathize, communicate empathically with cryptids. And that's going to be her role in this. Not only is she hopefully going to be able to communicate empathically with the Jersey Devil, she's also the handler for Jackknife, which is the last surviving jackalope. And this is a pretty nifty bit of continuity for her because Hair Trigger went around and she wiped out most of the other jackalopes when she was a free agent. Vicky, of course, is there for her earthbending powers. She has primarily a support role here that comes into play in various important ways. But this story, I think, is more about the dynamic between Hair Trigger and Sylvia. Sylvia is one of the parole officers, Common Victory, right there. Since her battle armor is technically the property of the U.S. government, being made out of the wreckage of a satellite, after all, she kind of has to do favors for the government occasionally to pay the rent, basically, for lack of a better way to put it. Vicky is the only person who can use it, but obviously it's government property and they're justified in taking it away from her. And Carly is a pretty goody two-shoes character, so she wouldn't be really happy to know her friend had stolen government property. This is kind of a two-edged sword, though, that the government is playing around with. The Spec Hops group, which is what they call Hair Trigger's group, is kind of Black Ops. I mean, they are literally off the books Black Ops, unlike the Black Hops group, which has a pun-based name, but still operates in a pretty sanctioned way for a government clandestine organization. At least so it seems. So again, using ex-criminals, doing very off the books kind of stuff. This is why I call them the Suicide Squad of the Kamen America universe. And the story itself is pretty straightforward. They try and run down the Jersey Devil and make contact with it before Apex Moth and Cryptique can. And the story is not bad, but it's also not particularly groundbreaking. Every storyline that involves a major villain organization like Cryptique has these episodes where the villain tries to gather power and the heroes try and thwart them from getting it. It's not exactly villain of the week material, but it's very close. I think the story does a pretty good job of giving every character its due. My real issue with this is the inclusion of Father Redder. Now, obviously, the crossover has to have Father Redder in it in order to count as a Soulfinder crossover. Well, I guess Father Crane is in this as well, so he kind of contributes to that. But the Jersey Devil is not an actual demon, nor is it someone possessed by an actual demon. So having one of the Vatican's combat exorcists along, kind of a strange choice from an in-universe perspective. We're told that Father Crane is drawn in through some old connections, and he's there to kind of be the parole officer for everyone involved. I mean, Sylvia is doing that as well, but a lone parole officer, not a great look. You generally want two, and I understand why. Therefore, the government would want to sanction known quantities on this mission. I don't understand why the Soulfinders would be deeply invested on going on this mission. They've so far had very detailed write-ups on all the possessed people they've tangled with, and I guess they could be interested in seeing whether the Jersey Devil is a real devil or not. I guess I just would have liked a little more exposition on what exactly motivated Father Crane to be interested in this from the point of view of the Vatican specialized exorcist corps, as opposed to just being, a patriot and a former soldier. And I could understand it if that was the dynamic, but it really does feel, at least at the outset, like this is an official sanctioned Soulfinder mission, and that they think they might have an actual demon to exorcist, which never materializes. So I think it's a decent story, and we are at the point in the Iconics Comics library that there are definite mid-tier stories, and this kind of feels like one of them. There's nothing wrong with it. It's very competently and workmanly done. It is good storytelling. It is a fun story for a fun story's sake, and it has interesting examinations of the concepts of repentance, reform, what it means to try and do those things, and what it means to oversee people doing those things, which is a side you don't often see. What does it mean to be responsible as a officer of the peace, for lack of a better term, to oversee the correction and reformation, the re-education of a person who has dedicated their lives to very, very destructive acts up until this point. So there is a theme of that in there, and the Jersey Devil is actually a part of that, which is very nice to see as well. Connecting with and coming to an understanding with the Jersey Devil is an important part of the story. So I think thematically it's good. The character work is good. The plot is good. But it's not really great on any of these levels. I still think that Kamen America Volume 2 is my favorite Iconic Comics storyline. Well, that and Soulfinder Black Tide, both of which are great stories. And the problem that we are starting to have now is that you can compare iconic comic stories to each other, and you can start to form a hierarchy of them. And while I think the worst iconic comic story is still very good, especially by the modern comic standards, this one does not stand out from their offerings in any way. And this is a problem that you run into when you consistently put out really entertaining work. I think it's good that that Timothy Lim and Mark Pellegrini and Doug Ernst now are managing to put together these stories and keep them coming out and continue to deliver entertaining storytelling. I struggle to find anything about this book that sets it apart from the others. If you've already read an iconic comics story and you want more, get this book. It's going to do for you exactly what you want it to do. If you haven't read an iconic comics book, this is not the best jumping on point. I think the previous crossover, the Black Ops X Kamen America crossover, is a better jumping on point if that's what you're looking for. That does a pretty good job of introducing all the characters without it feeling like there's backstory you're missing out on. This book definitely has some of that, especially, of course, for Hair Trigger and for Vicky, who are coming off of their own villain arcs and starting their way to redemption. You don't really get a sense of how bad they were relative to the world they inhabit in this story, and that's I think an important part of a redemption arc, and part of what makes this story, I think, feel less effective than some of the other iconic comics offerings on tap. All in all, I think this is a story worth buying, but it's not a story to start with. So if you're looking to expand your iconic comics library, by all means pick this up. If you're looking to get started, I would actually recommend you start with the Omnibus, which is, of course, a retelling of the entire first arc. So then, once you've picked that up and maybe read Volume 5 and the previous crossover, I don't remember if that crossover is in here or not. Let me check real quick. I guess we don't have a table of contents. Page numbers and tables of contents, folks. They're very, very helpful. I don't see the crossover in here. I could be going too fast to notice it, but just based on my quick thumbing, I don't think it's in here. So yeah, pick up the previous crossover, and then, and only then, would I pick up Black Ops Volume 5 and the second crossover, because we are at the point where you do need a certain foundation. And that is one of my big critiques of this story. So we're going to go into the critiques and the spoiler talks now. If you want to avoid that, this is the moment to dip out. Okay? Okay. So let's talk about the critiques of the story. And the biggest one is that this is a story that, while you can read it without knowing any of the backstory, does feel a little bit incomplete if you don't know all of it. I always point to the first Avengers movie in 2012 as my landmark crossover introductory movie. I saw that movie having only seen Captain America: The First Avenger. But that movie was so effective in its character work that I did not feel like I was missing out on anything to understand all of the characters. That is very hard to do. And in fact, if you watch Age of Ultron, not even that follow-up sequel to the original Avengers does the same thing, and it even had the same writer and director. So that kind of thing is like catching lightning in a bottle. Now, Iconic Comics never promised us that all of their stories would stand alone, that we wouldn't have to get invested in their entire comics universe to understand what was going on. And that's fine. Some people want to build these extremely interconnected universes where there are a ton of references and swapping back and forth between stories. Not every publisher needs to operate like Shonen Jump, where each title is completely standalone and almost never touches on another one. That said, and another thing I should mention is at the rate Iconic Comics puts out books, at the rate of, seven titles a year, for about $15 a pop, it's not a huge investment, if you're into collecting comics, and you get like a really great durable product too. They are hardcovers, they are, really good quality printing and binding. So it's not like this book is going to wear out after you read it a few times. You can pass it around your entire family, whether you have kids, whether you have nieces and nephews, or even your cousins. Like, you can read these books a couple of dozen times and they'll still be in really great condition, unlike, say, a staple-bound comic book. So you're getting good bang for your buck here. Even if you collect all of them, that is kind of expensive, but you are getting a cohesive narrative, out of all of them. At the same time, if you just wanted to read, for example, Black Ops, you might be kind of disappointed at this point, because the Black Ops crew hasn't had a standalone adventure in quite some time. All of their numbered volumes, the last two numbered volumes they've gotten, have been these crossovers. So I kind of understand why that is, all things considered. But if something similar happened to Kamen America, I might be kind of upset. There's definitely an element of potential franchise fatigue that can come into the story at this point, and it's something that they're just going to have to watch out for. This is just a danger of doing a comics universe this way. You can't get the highs that come with this kind of storyteller without running that risk. So this isn't as much of a critique as it is just a bit of trepidation that always comes over me when you see this kind of writing in play. For now, it's going great, and hopefully it will continue to go great. Doug Ernst and Mark Pellegrini have clearly put a lot of effort into coordinating this story. Redder in this story feels like Redder feels in all of his other outings. The situation he's in is very different, and he takes it remarkably in stride, which I guess shouldn't be that surprising. He's used to dealing with actual demons, after all. A pretend demon, not that close. But there's also the fact that on top of the Chimeratrons and the mutant animals and the demons that already exist in this world, we find out that the Jersey Devil was probably a result of genetic manipulation by an alien, like an honest-to-God alien from outer space. So the world is getting a little wacky, and there's always a risk of tonal drift when you have this many different wild and crazy ideas at play. Like, look, and this is the alien. This is the alien that seems to have impregnated a woman with a Jersey Devil. Very strange. Very strange. Very comic booky. It's not bad. But tonally, the world is beginning to divide quite a bit. And if they try and bring in Alejandro Mirabel's Long Harbor to this as well, because Iconic Comics publishes that now, that's you're getting kind of chancy there. I don't know if you want everything here to cross over. And that's before we look at the fact that at the end, Versema from Punchline is introduced and confirmed to be a part of the greater Iconics universe. And again, I don't have a problem with this per se, but there are a lot of things in the air now, and that's a dangerous place to be as a writer, for sure. A few other storytelling critiques. I've already mentioned that I'm not quite sure what Father Crane is doing here. At this, by the same token, Jackknife is introduced, I think, just to make the team feel a little more cryptidy. Of course, Hair Trigger is here already, but I mean, she's really the team's only connection back to the Black Ops franchise, so they seem to have added what just looks like an Usagi knockoff, which I'm not hugely fond of. At first, I thought it was Usagi because they look very similar except for their coloration. Of course, the antlers. But I don't know. I guess I'm just not a fan of palette-swapped characters. I would have liked a slightly different cryptid. That said, it does tie back into Hair Trigger's backstory, so that's kind of important as well, I suppose. There's some interesting character developments here. Vicky seems to have a crush on Sawyer, the dog handler from the Black Ops team. So I like that continued development of relationships between the characters, even though there's a ton of other things going on in here. All of the Cryptique villains get a little time in the sun in this story arc, which is fun and nice to see. But at the same time, we're not seeing them really outside of this. We saw the Bandito character in Kamen America 5, but I think that's the only time we've seen them outside of Black Ops stories and the crossovers. So I really think it's time for another Black Ops story just to touch base with what these guys are doing right now. And hopefully it will be more than just a crossover with Versema. Yeah, right now it really feels like the villains outside of the Kamen America franchise, the villains are what really need fleshed out in the Iconics world, and I'm looking forward to getting some of that in future storylines, because right now both Apex Moth and Sylvia's mother, whose name escapes me right now, are kind of at the mustache twirling phase of their development. We know they're the bad guy and they're out to do not great things, but I would like to see a little bit more about them. We know somebody has seen Apex Moth without his helmet on now. I'm kind of curious about that as well. I guess my one big critique of this story, though, is that there's just so much going on here. It does make it hard to come into the story at this point. I know that Kamen America Volume 5 was intended as a jumping on point, but that was also a very crowded story. And I think you can jump on in Kamen America Volume 5, but I'm waiting to see a good jump on point at this phase of the story for new readers who aren't as interested in Kamen America. If you're interested in the Black Ops franchise, you really have to go back to Volume 3. And for the Soulfinder franchise, I think the best jumping on point, if you don't begin at the beginning, is Black Tide, which I guess isn't that surprising because it only has 3 volumes total. But yeah, the danger of your ever-evolving continuity is that jumping on points become fewer and farther between. And while up until Volume 3 of Kamen America, I would have said you could jump into the Iconics universe anywhere, I'm finding myself being able to say that less and less now. And I'm not sure I like that. But this is a matter of taste as well. As an outside observer, I have always liked it when storytelling tries to be as accessible as possible to new readers at every point, every book being someone's first, as they often say in comics. You can set that viewpoint aside. The Lord of the Rings trilogy does not really facilitate your jumping in on any book. You really need to start with Fellowship and read from there. That said, you also didn't have to read The Hobbit to understand it. So there's a give and take here. And so far, I think Iconic is balancing that as a equation of accessibility versus continuity. And that's something everyone is going to have different thoughts on. All I'll say right now is that I am cautiously optimistic that they will continue to be able to balance this. That's all I've got for you today. Let me know what you think about the ongoing Iconics franchise down in the comments below. There's a like button and a subscribe button down there. You can use those as you see fit, and I'll talk to you later.